Tidal Flooding Talk. We are brought to you by the New Jersey Coastal Coalition and filmed live every Sunday usually, but today it's Saturday, at the Irish Pub in Atlantic City.
And appreciate you joining us a day early. It is Saturday, and I'm meteorologist Dan Skeldon. Glad to be with you on this weekend where the weather's turning out okay. Hopefully your tropical storm cleanup has concluded. Hopefully you had nothing to clean up, but quite the storm. I had Joe Martucci last week and broke it all down for you. This week, really honored to have first-time guest, right? Dr. Bill Thomas with us, and Doctor, usually, we'd shake your hand at this point and welcome you, but we're social distance, so a wave, an elbow bump, and we'd love for you to introduce yourself and tell our viewers who you are.
All right, well, this is Bill Thomas. I'm an anthropologist. My main interest is human environmental problems. Typically, I'm interested in conservation and how do we save things. But in this case, when you talk about coastal flooding and stuff, it's interesting to me to get back to first principles. Why is this a human problem, and why so? And then how do humans react to things? And insights that anthropologists can give us that let us form the best policies and take the actions that'll save us some time if we're going to address these issues. It's also possible, as we were talking before the cameras went on, that we won't do this. Of course, the whales don't care. It's just going to keep floating by. But we're interested because it's in our interest to now address these things, and for me, that makes this an anthropologist's problem, not it's not just an engineering.
And now it's something you have a front row seat for, because recently you moved from the high point of New Jersey, Sussex County, northwest part of the state, right down here to the shore. So you do have a front row seat to what we're going to talk about and whatever Mother Nature has in store for us over the coming years.
That's right. It matters to me now more than it did 4 weeks ago. Yes.
Do you find that people are more aware of the issues of coastal flooding now than they were maybe 10 years ago or before that?
I find that my friends who live here are very aware of it now, because I believe you guys are looking at an event, a nuisance event a week right now, like 50 a year. Whereas if you talk to, I grew up in Ohio, so people in Ohio are just, clueless about this unless it, interrupts their vacation. And then if you get hit with a hurricane and they actually stayed in that hotel, oh my goodness, that will bother them. And even up in Sussex County, most people there aren't thinking about flooding. I used to be involved with some Passaic River Institute, and of course the Passaic River floods quite regularly now. And people are, concerned in the Passaic River watershed, but the further you get away from the flooding issue, so it's people are self-interested, right? So.
And as a scientist, who's traveled the world and unique perspective, how do you better communicate the issue? Like how can we? Because that's really the whole goal of Tidal Flooding Talk, is to raise awareness and hopefully promote resiliency and action on something we know is going to happen. Now, is it all nuisance flooding for the next 5 years, or is the next big one, a month away? We don't know that, but we're always trying to promote awareness. And how can we do that more effectively, and communicate that message, in trying to communicate to both homeowners and vacationers alike.
Right. Okay. So for me, you go back to first principles, and that is that human beings are biological organisms, so they're selfish. So if we start with that we have to get to people's self-interest. Secondly, I think that the biggest thing in my lifetime has been the understanding that the planet is not a linear machine that we can catalog and then run. We now know that it's connected in ways we don't understand and may never understand, and that the better we get at looking at the parts, the more parts we find. Better microscopes, every time we get a better microscope, we find a flea on top of a tick, oh my God, there's more stuff there. So the breakthrough for guys like me and the environmental thing is that we need to step back and let the earth process. So when we're talking to people, first and foremost, it's like, well, how does this affect them? And how can I bring this home to them? And then how can I narrow the scope of the problem so that they can deal with it. Because when you start talking about nonlinear mathematics and global systems and geologic time, people's eyes glaze right over.
Yeah,
You're done.
They tune out, you're done. Absolutely.
Yeah, you're done.
Yep.
And so, you know, if you want to put a class to sleep or anybody to sleep, just go down that road. But if you start saying, well, you know, your house is going to start rotting from the bottom up. Why is that? Well, because it was only built 4 feet above mean high tide, and now it needs to be 15 feet. Huh? What? That doesn't happen to me. Well, it's going to. And this is always the other issue is the time scale. You know, when you as a weatherman, you know that, a meteorologist, you know that geologic time is mind-boggling for human beings. So when we start talking about 60,000, 120,000 year time scales, and humans only live 50 years, it's hopeless. So then again, you have to bring it back to your family and the next generation. You want to leave that house to your daughter? I want to leave my house to my daughter. That's one of the reasons we bought down here. People will always want to live here, and my daughter will have something that I didn't have to start off with. Well, I made sure I bought something that didn't flood during Sandy. You know, and so that's, to me, is that you bring it down to your neighborhood, your car, your life, and, you know, most of my work has been overseas. Most of my work has been in conservation issues. But we do the same thing. We talk on, I let them teach me. And so, in here, you can almost do the same thing if you talk to the folks who've lived here all their lives. You say, well, is that street flowing? Oh, yeah. They'll tell you. You
Yep.
don't need an app. They don't need anything. That floods, if we get a high tide, every king tide, da. So then you go back to them and say, well, you've told me that this is happening. Did I get it right? Yeah. Okay. Well, now, we want to spend some money to try to keep that from taking your car out. What do you think? Oh, yeah. That sounds like something I'm up for. Not, oh, we want to fix Bill's problem down there on, you know, the west end of Ventnor. Well, what's that got to do with me? They're always fixing the west end of Ventnor. When are they going to fix Atlantic City? So that's what I try to do, is that, you know, take those big issues and distill them into something that you can wrap your, you know, hands around. And then talk to person and say, well, you know, I get, and I spend a lot of time talking, as you probably noticed, but, you know, and it drives some of my friends in the conservation business crazy because they see these big issues and they want everybody to get it. But I'm really a big believer in once you get the locals and everybody behind you, these things don't go away. If I just get the three of us to, you know, understand a problem and convince somebody to pass something, guaranteed someone will get their ear and we'll lose it eventually. But when you have a groundswell of people who understand the issue in their own lives and then, you know, can be counted on to vote their own self-interest, well, it's a powerful tool.
Absolutely.
Well, after Sandy, I think that certainly got a lot of people's attention,
Yeah.
and a lot of laws even changed. You know, we have stricter regulations when it comes to building. But immediately after a coastal storm, how do people usually react?
Well, to me, it's interesting. You know, I've always said that if I ever got back into government, I'd want to work for FEMA because I was fortunate enough to work for the city of Ventnor during a storm, and the cooperation between towns and between agencies was inspiring. You know, capable people getting after problems, people getting out of the way in local, even citizens, you know, pitching in, doing their part, and just trying to play by the rules. I do know that, as you probably know, is afterwards, sometimes people take advantage of it. Again, you know, this is human nature. There's going to be that percentage of people that don't want to play by the rules. And it's sort of an interesting side note when you're an anthropologist. Americans talk about competition all the time, right? You know, we're going to go after it, da-da-da. But it's really cooperation that makes all this work, right? People paying taxes, playing by the rules, following the laws. You know, if you sign a contract and you go to the, you know, to court, it's going to be upheld. That's what makes it work. And it's the same with sports. I mean, when you look at like a football game, oh, it's like war. Not really. You know, there are rules, and those of us who have played any of these sports realize that when somebody, you know, cheats, that's just everybody in the game is outraged. So you kind of see that kind of cooperation really steps to the forefront when we have a disaster. When we don't have a disaster, you know, a lot of people, you know, trying to get their own edge and everything because a lot of times they just don't see how it can go wrong. But when it has gone wrong, I'm always, sort of heartened by the fact that Americans step up.
So you'd say the majority of people are cooperating?
Yes, I'd say most people, I've been around the world and I've lived in places where people look like they would cut your heart out. And most people are good people. Most people, I took my brother, who had no idea where we're going, to a place who had one of the highest murder rates in the world, and the people took care of him. So when you're in America, where people, they may not know their neighbors, but they don't wish them any ill will. It's usually they're too busy. When something happens, people step up. Like a little storm the other day, my entire neighborhood was out helping one another, picking up things that were blown around, telling who had power, who could come where and help. Now that may just be it's one of the reasons I moved back here, because people can stay here and know each other. And I think, again, as an anthropologist, when you see where donations come from, it's areas like this where people put down roots and stay. Where you have a place like, Phoenix, Arizona, where 5 out of 10 people won't make 10 years there. It's very hard to get people to cooperate and support charities or support one another because they don't have any roots. But here, I mean, you're probably second, third, fourth generation, right? And same with most people I know here. I'm the newbie, and I've been in and out here for 20 years. So I think, these are kind of basic things you see as an anthropologist. But I'm always heartened at the way people step up when we have a disaster.
And it does. A disaster, or the big one, if you will, kind of wakes people up and unites them and reminds us that it can happen here, because sometimes you have to wait a generation in between big events.
Yes,
so
yes.
If you don't have that Sandy, no one wishes Sandy upon a community, but if you don't have that Sandy, you kind of develop this false sense of kind of immunity, like, all right, it can't happen here, it doesn't happen here, we have a bubble. My first 10 years in South Jersey, people said, all right, South Jersey bubble, we don't get hit. And then we had 3 blizzards, Derecho, Sandy, Jonas, it was one thing after another from 2009 to 2016. So it's just, no place is immune, and one thing these storms do is gives us a measuring stick, gives us a way to compare, gives us an idea of what the worst case scenario could be. And this hurricane season is supposed to be busy. So this storm that we just had, the I storm, we're not going to pronounce it. Hopefully they retire the name and we'll never have to hear it again. But it reminds us that, hey, hurricane season's really just beginning, and the meat of the season is going to come up for the next couple of months, and there could be much stronger storms, and we should be ready. We shouldn't act when a storm's coming. We should act before. We should act now when things are quiet.
Yeah, and as an anthropologist, too, the interesting thing is, how do you get people to cooperate in the ways that are preemptive? Because again, as our culture, when we're all gone and they look at us from space somewhere and the aliens come in and go, wow, these guys talked about competition a lot. How do we get us to put that aside and understand that cooperation is really how we got all this? The competition stuff's fun, but it's not how you get anywhere. Competition is what keeps societies back. So how do we get to the point where we get Dutch level, cooperation, so we can do flooding issues?
Well, what do you think the answer is?
Well, I don't. Unfortunately, I think it's going to take a series of catastrophes. As somebody who works in the environmental field, you look at what's going on now that doesn't even make the paper. It sounds like the end of the earth, right? I mean, we just had a storm. There's, as you just pointed out, there's lots of storms coming. Maybe. Siberia's on fire. The Sahara is blowing away. There's a drought out west. There's all kinds of things going on that in a normal year would be stealing the headlines, but the pandemic is stealing the headlines. So in a weird way, this might be what we need to get us. Like you see coming in here, everybody had our masks on. We're social distancing. People taking it seriously, which is what we need. Now the next thing is where we're going to put our money is where our mouth is, and like the Dutch spend $5.5 billion a year on flood control, and they're 1/250th the size of the U.S. That's the kind of commitment it has. But nobody. I don't know anybody that's swimming away from the Netherlands. Right. People want to live there. People want to vacation there. It's a functioning society where people thrive. They spend their money on that though. We don't yet. Now we're big, so it's going to be a lot more money. But of course, the Dutch somehow make it work. Why can't we?
Yeah, we have a lot more miles of coast.
Yeah.
But you're right. You can't fix a problem if you're not committed to mentally and financially committed to fixing that problem.
And that's back to people.
Right.
To just say no. Like I always say, when somebody goes out on Social Security disability and they're fighting for it, it's like, that's why I pay taxes. That's the world I want to live in. I don't want you to starve. It's like, no, you're hurt. You can't work, right? As long as it's legal, that's what I pay taxes for. I don't pay taxes. I don't want my taxes used for some of the stuff we use it for, but I sure as hell want it for environmental protection, coastal protection, those sorts of things. Man, I'm glad to pitch in, because that's to me too, right? Again, if you're selling this, you can't use contractors from XYZ country. You use people who live here.
Right.
It's all money that's going right back into our communities.
Right.
And that's always one of the great things to me about living at the shore, right? Is your daughter works with, and I tip her when and my daughter's shoveling ice cream tonight, and you leave her a few cents, and then Joe the bartender is our friend, and of course, and then when they go to your deli, and then those kids go to school, and I teach them, but they can afford it, and the property taxes pay for decent teachers, and round it goes, and we have a decent life.
Community,
Yeah.
and actually that's one way the Coastal Coalition was born. It was out of a sense of community. The community wanted to work along the Atlantic and May County shoreline, and then expanding farther up the coast. So you're right. I think we have that as an advantage. The multi-generational connections to our home, wanting to keep it our home. That's why we do beach replenishment. That's why we do. I mean, it was without the shore, I think less people would want to live here, right? I mean, people. The interior South Jersey is beautiful too, but no, the shore is something we have to protect, and that's what the Coastal Coalition tries to do. Is
Right.
And I to me, right, I'm not involved, but making that pitch to our representatives is that, you can't, this is priceless, not the shore itself, but the community that's going to support all of the first responders, all those things that get lost. Like again, I'm from Youngstown, Ohio. We lost our community. The steel mills moved and the factories moved, and we're, just a shell. Well, once you do that, there are ancillary costs that come with folks not being able to make a living, not being able to see a future, that lead to escalating problems for your police and fire and everybody else with no tax base now. Whereas, so spending money on shore replenishment, so people come here, want to live and spend their money, and people want a vacation here to support those people, creates this, 60-mile wide, literally, band that runs down the coast where people not only commute to be there, spend a lot of time and money there, but, work there. Like people work in Atlantic City that live in Egg Harbor, and, that's not, nobody even bats an eye about that, but by keeping this alive, you keep Egg Harbor alive, you keep a lot of things alive, and it's like, the old-timers will say people know the price of everything and the value of nothing. This is certainly a value that it's almost impossible to register until you begin to, talk to people about, wow, look at, if you're from me and you lost your community, and you come here and you say, oh my God, that's one of the reasons I moved back, so my daughter would have a chance to have a life where she didn't become a migrant. She wants to, that's up to her, but to be able to live in a place in France for a lifetime, oh my God, it's priceless.
So we should see how valuable this location, this area is, and that we need to protect it for ourselves and for our future generations, that since we're planting roots here.
Right, and if you're making the selfish argument that I'm making, it's in the selfish interest of every politician in the state to see it thrive. Every politician in America to create bans like this all over the country, because these are thriving, citizen-driven areas that promote good citizenship, promote caring for your country, promote, well, you pay taxes, right? Everybody knows New Jersey pays taxes. Well, why do people want to stay there? Because they get something for it. They see the value in it. And if those tax dollars go into coastal replenishment, or a flooding, a better sewer system, a pump system or something like that, well, so be it. That's what we spend the money for, right?
Absolutely.
So, but I think if you're not seeing that, you're not seeing that.
If you are watching live now on Facebook, you could leave comments or ask questions. We do have a few comments. I don't see any questions. Paula says hey. Virginia says hello. Marie says hello. We have Ann Walters gives a thumbs up emoji. Other than that, and Virginia says foggy outside in Ocean City, New Jersey.
Oh, okay.
Other than that, no questions yet.
Which is good, and we have. I mean, it's such a wild week of weather last week with our tropical system. Then we had multiple rounds of severe thunderstorms. One last night that came on through. Power outages. Thankfully, I mean, coastal flooding was one of the few things we didn't have a whole lot of. Just with the track of the storm, and that's what Joe and I talked about last week. So we'd like to catch our breath a little bit. Some nicer weather coming tomorrow and Monday and Tuesday. Hotter, better beach weather as well. But yeah, hurricane season is going to be a bad one this year. We talked about maybe running out of names. We're already up to J. Josephine is the next one. It goes to W, and then the Greek letters after that. And who knows? So now is the time to prepare. Things are quiet right now, but August 15th to October 15th is always the meat of any hurricane season. And I guess the storm earlier this week taught us it doesn't have to be a hurricane to be bad. This was a tropical storm, and you had tornadoes, and you had 1.3 million people in New Jersey without power, and as you kind of alluded to, people came together.
Yes,
in the worst of times, it brings out the best of people, especially in these close-knit communities, and that's a good thing. So now is the time to be preparing for what's coming this hurricane season. Hopefully nothing, but now's the time to have your hurricane kit. We're going to talk about that next week. We have Summers Point Emergency Management official on with us, and we're talking about emergency kits and what they did during emergency management during a pandemic. Tropical systems coming up the coast. So yeah, now is the time to prepare. And for whatever Mother Nature throws at us the rest of the fall.
Yeah, I would say too, though, the one thing, again, don't overestimate your abilities. As somebody who studies human beings, we consistently overestimate our saltiness when it comes to these things. If they tell you to leave, leave.
So you as a rookie shore resident, then a mandatory evacuation order comes up, you're leaving then?
I'll get my family out for sure. It's kind of
I don't want to put you on the spot.
No. The thing is this: is that I would leave if I don't. If I can't leave, I'll stay. But I guess the thing is, I'm a fellow in the Explorers Club, and I spend most of my time in unexplored New Guinea. So a little bit of floodwater is not scaring me. I mean, and I've done some stuff like that. That said, if I can, I'll leave my family. Because again, I'm getting old. When I was 20, this would have been probably a lot less. Scary, but 20 or 60 with a couple people to take care of, I probably should be.
And I think I like that. People kind of overestimate their saltiness. I've been here forever. I've been through storms. I'm staying. And we saw that in Sandy. Those people are calling up, hey, come rescue me. I'm flood. And that's what you don't want. And we've had many shows dedicated to that. So hopefully there'll be no evacuations, required with the storms this year. But we always stress, if an order comes down, you evacuate.
Yeah.
Now, why is that such a thing? I mean, besides people that have a hardship and can't find a way to leave or something like that, why do people almost refuse to leave for that reason? I've been here forever, I'm not going anywhere.
Well, I think that's it, right? They haven't seen it. They haven't seen it. They haven't, at least in my opinion, right? I've been through some bad storms. Again, I spent a lot of time in literally unexplored places where if you get hurt, you're hurt. You got to get yourself out, and they've never been there. And so, most people, like, you look in the mirror, right? And I always because I used to teach. You think you still look 30 years old. You don't, right? And those kids in front of you know that. You look like their grandfather. But you don't see that until you're standing there with one of them and you look like their grandfather, right? And so you still estimate, I can do 100, this or 100 push-ups. Yeah, right. Okay, well, it's not going to save you in this. You're going to run up against things that are so powerful. Like if you see it all the time here with rip tides and things like that. People die. People who can swim because they estimated. Well, if you're walking down a street and it's flooded and a manhole's blown out and you get sucked into it, I don't care how many chin-ups you can do. You're not going to make that. You're probably going to die. And why were you there? Because you didn't want to pay for a Holiday Inn and mend them? I don't know, but to me that's not smart.
And that's another topic we'll talk about next week, and with emergency management, and hopefully there'll be no hurricanes on the radar next week. So that is our show next week. Back every week at the Irish Pub, which is still open. The inside, which is where we are now, closed. So we are safe. We are social distance, but they have a beautiful outside patio, especially now that the weather has cooled off a little bit. I mean, great out there, lots of shade. They're open 11:30 a.m. to midnight, so they're not open 24/7 right now, and things get back to normal. They'll get back to normal, but every day, 7 days a week, 11:30 a.m. to midnight. And the wonderful folks here, Dick and Kathy Burke at the Irish Pub, all the employees, great bartenders and waiters and waitresses would love to see you, and they support the New Jersey Coastal Coalition. So come on down to the Irish Pub. You're going to have some really nice weather to do it the next 3 days as well.
And we would like to thank you for being a guest on our show.
My
So we
pleasure.
have a little something for you from the Irish Pub and the New Jersey Coastal Coalition.
Thank you.
An Irish Pub t-shirt.
All right, there we go. Thanks very much. Thanks for having me.
All right, Doctor, so nice to have you. We welcome you back anytime you want to chat, and we will hopefully see you here next weekend on Tidal Flooding Talk. Thanks for joining us, and stay healthy and have a happy and safe weekend.
Good night.